With us now is James Gordon Meek from the New York Daily News. And you wrote about a solemn encounter you had. It's on the front page today of the Daily News, my emotional meeting with the president at my friend's graveside. Can you tell us what happened there, James?
Well, President Obama, as many Americans know, was doing the annual ritual of Veterans Day. He was speaking at the Arlington National Cemetery, the home of our nation's honored military dead, and he was laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. And then he made an unscheduled stop at Section 60, which is quite a ways away in the cemetery from where he was speaking. And Section 60 is where a lot of the dead from Iraq and Afghanistan are buried, and on Veterans Day and any day of the week, really, you find a lot of family members and buddies from the military of loved ones who were buried in Section 60. And he stopped there with First Lady Michelle Obama to see some of the graves and talk to some family members and friends and hear stories about fallen warriors. And that was, as I say, unscheduled. I was there not as a reporter, but I was there to visit, as I do on Memorial Day and Veterans Day, several graves of people I know buried at Arlington, just as a personal task, personal thing that I do. And frankly, when I woke up that morning, the last thing in the world I expected to do was have a conversation with President Obama, and that's what I did. I ended up telling him about one of the people I know who's buried there in Section 60, Private First Class David H. Sherritt II, who was killed in action in Iraq last year.
And what was his reaction?
Well, the president saw me standing there in the rain, and I was kind of trying not to draw attention to myself. That's my reporter's instinct, because I was not looking to speak to the president. And he saw me, and he kind of diverted off his path as he was walking back towards his motorcade. And he reached out for my hand, and we shook hands, and he asked for my name, and he asked me about Dave Sherritt and how I knew him. And I told him that his father was my high school English teacher and Shakespeare teacher, and is still a very, very close friend of mine. And Dave was a star football player in high school, and that he had grown up to be one of the toughest soldiers in the 101st Airborne Division. And he was very gratified to hear about that.
What struck you about the president? I mean, what was his demeanor like? What was your impression?
He was absolutely somber and serious, and what really struck me, just as a person, not as a journalist, I knew what was going on that day, obviously. I knew he was going back to the White House to meet with his war council to weigh whether to send up to 40,000 more troops into harm's way in Afghanistan, but he didn't have to go to Section 60. There was no White House aide who came along and screened the people who were standing there, you know, tending to graves and arranging flowers. I mean, this guy, the president, could have gotten yelled at by a widow. Anything could have happened, and it would have been on full display in front of the press pool that travels with him, and they were all, you know, snapping away behind my back as I was standing there. Anything could have happened. It was a risky thing for him to do, but he felt it necessary, I guess, as he was weighing this big decision to go and see where the nation's honored dead are buried and meet with some of their friends and families.
James, your article today was really moving. It was very interesting to read, and I got to say, when you take a walk through a cemetery, I just did this at West Point, and you see the men and women who have died in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they were so young, it weighs on you. For the commander-in-chief to do that, it must feel like a burden that is greater than he's ever borne. Thank you, James.
I can't see into his heart, but I did look into his eyes, and he seemed to take it very, very seriously, the burden of command.
Yeah, absolutely.
James, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.